Hi, this is Tim Hamilton, the co-host of the Maryland Crabs, and I'm here with a crab cake for your listening pleasure. What's a crab cake? Well, it's not quite a full episode, it's just a little snippet. Stay tuned and check it out. Make sure you check us out on themarylandcrabs.com. You can follow us on Twitter at MD Crabs Podcast or find us on Facebook at the Maryland Crabs Podcast. Don't forget, subscribe, rate us, iTunes. Go there now.
Hello?
Hey, Paula, it's Tim Hamilton calling from Annapolis. How are you doing today?
Good enough. How about you?
Each day better than the last, you know?
There you go.
Not really.
Well, you can't keep that run going.
No, it's a lot of pressure. So I just sink into a depression and stay there because the highs aren't that high and the lows, you know, you're just used to them. But it's the holiday season, so I'm going to try and pick it up a little bit.
Yeah. I had a friend when I first started in comedy in Boston years ago. Really brilliant comic, by the way.
Who was it?
His name was Mike Donovan.
I know Mike Donovan.
And he never left Boston.
Nope.
He's really brilliant. And I would see him in the clubs, and he was always very depressed. And I would say, "Hey, Mike, how you doing?" He'd go, "I just want to be a 5. I don't want to be a 1. I don't want to be a 10. I just want to be a 5."
The secret is to keep everything manageable. Just keep, a 5. You're not going to disappoint yourself. That's kind of that's the stratosphere at that point. I respect that.
I'm not sure if Mike ever achieved his 5. I haven't talked to him in many years, but I know he's still around, still doing his thing.
Dennis Leary, who's another Boston comic, he said this years ago. He said, he goes, "Happiness is bullshit." He said, "No one's happy. You have pockets of happiness, like, a cigarette, talking to a friend, going out." He goes, "You have pockets of happiness. Just be fine with that." And I thought, okay, well, that's kind of the management of that whole emotional roller coaster as well.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. In fact, when all this happened with, the virus and the rise of white supremacy, it's just unthinkable, god-awful things that haven't even played themselves all the way out and clearly are not on a good trajectory. At first I was really depressed and, I'm not sure that I'm still not. But I did start saying to myself, like, where the idea that, that life was supposed to be sort of easy. Like, where does that come from? I think probably television and movies more than anything.
I guess, but I have friends who say that just, they'll get on the high horse. They say, 150 years ago, you had settlers and they were, 8 of their kids would die on their way out to the Oregon Trail and they're being pursued by, and I'm like, yeah, but they didn't have a Twitter with like their president yelling at them every day. So, I mean, it's all relative.
Yeah. I always, whenever there's young people in my audience, I say to them, you have no idea what my generation has been through. We had 3 television channels.
That you had to get up to change.
I just want them to understand the difficulty.
Yeah.
I have a podcast called Nobody Listens to Paula Poundstone. And part of the podcast, and it really, is this book club. And the book club, sometimes we do it good and sometimes we could use some improvement. But the reason I had this idea for doing a book club was it was just sort of a way to generate a conversation, just another way of just
the premise.
Right, content. It's not that you really. I mean, we are reading the books, but it's not that we really need to. Yeah, we did Eat, Pray, Love. The first one was Moby Dick. Then it was Eat, Pray, Love. And it's not that we really need to analyze the book, which we sometimes get carried away with ourselves and forget that we don't really need to analyze the book. But anyway, so we opened up the choice about what the next book was to be to the listeners via Facebook or email or something. I don't know. I wasn't in charge of it. But the listeners that participated in the choice overwhelmingly chose, of all things, Fight Club. Now, I have never seen the movie and I had never read the book, and I've been listening to the book, and human beings are just miserable fucks.
Well, the movie's very nihilistic, but I mean, I'd like to say I read the book, but I didn't. I read, but I couldn't imagine plowing through a book of that. To be honest with you, that's why they have movies. I'm intrigued
by it. I have to say, the reader is really good, but when I first started listening, so last night we taped the episode wherein we were talking about the first 5 chapters, and I was like, you know what? It's the male version of Eat, Pray, Love.
Okay.
It's this indulgence into one's misery. And And, in the case, I'm sure that more things happen, perhaps, than what happened in Eat, Pray, Love. But there is just this thing like, oh, isn't that too bad?
It's like Shirley Valentine back in the 80s. That movie. It was the same sort of thing. Or the movie with Diane Lane where she goes to Tuscany or something. I don't know. But
yeah.
Your podcast is great, by the way. I started listening.
Oh, that's very sweet.
You and I talk every December, and I missed you last December. And I know you do these podcasts all the time, but you're a big deal here. So we love talking to you. And I missed you last December. Well, that's very nice to hear. Well, I love coming to Annapolis. Yeah, it's an annual pilgrimage, except for last year. And yeah, it's just been so fun all these years. I think part of it, very much like when I work Alexandria, is that I say to people in the audience, where you're from, what do you do for a living? And they might say, I'm a teacher, I'm a social worker, I'm a plumber. And I like that. You get a mix here, especially in Annapolis is, we have our snooty side, but then, you have your just regular side. And we're a small town, but we pretend we're a small town, but we're in the DC, Baltimore metro. So we just pretend that we're Mayberry. I wish we got more comics here. We have John Reap coming. We want to have some more comedy, but then we'd get people. It's spectacular. I mean, you sell out every time because you're going to be here on the 18th of December, which is right before Christmas.
I like to come when there's a thin sheet of ice on the sidewalk and I might break my neck. That's my time.
We're not LA, but we don't get weather like that. It's not too bad. We're on the bay, so it's not too bad.
I actually think it's been. I was there during weather like that, and I guess I haven't let it go. It was years ago.
Colin Quinn came down right before COVID hit, and it was like January, and he came in and he was like indignant. He goes, I drove 3 hours south, and he goes, it's supposed to be warmer here, and we were actually colder than New York, so he was bitching about that the whole time, so we didn't get the memo. Yeah, but back to your podcast. So I was listening to it the other day, and you have quite the eclectic mix of guests. You had Fiona Hill, who I'm a big fan of, 2 days or like last week, and then 2 weeks before that, or that was 2 weeks ago, and then this week you had an ornithologist talking about crows. Who else did you have here? You had Jane Lynch. You had a gardening expert. You had John Lovett from Pod Save America. I mean, you guys are all over the place, but each time I'm just as captivated by Jane Lynch as I am an ornithologist talking about crows.
Oh, that's nice to hear. When I started it, it was not to be a celebrity-driven podcast. I just wanted somebody that was going to come on and tell you information that's, that's helpful to have, that's going to come up in your life. And the only reason I started having like an actor or actress on, because then I decided that I would have this section where someone came and helped me learn to audition, and then I had the added bonus that I write the scene for us.
Right.
I can't remember.
You were singing a song in a couple episodes ago. It seemed kind of like freestyle rapping, except you're singing. And you do a great Bernie Sanders impression. I'm going to tell you, I was rather impressed. Thank you very much. Or Jackie Mason, it was one of them, but I was impressed.
It was close enough. I think the first one we had was Bill Irwin, and of the we call it Outside the Actors Studio, and he was so good at it, and it was so much fun that after that I was kind of hooked, and so we've had the occasional more. I actually just last night did Jean King, oh my God, she's on my hero shelf, with Fiona Hill, and Fiona Hill she's amazing.
She's awesome. I mean, I would vote for anything
so
that she would do.
Damn smart. Yeah, me too.
I watched every bit of her testimony. Yeah, I didn't read the book, but her testimony was just so riveting, and she kept her cool the whole time. It was just amazing to me. I would have snapped 5 minutes into it.
Oh, I would have too. But the other thing about her that I really appreciated when I was talking to her was she's really not partisan. When people say like, the branches of the government that are supposed to be nonpartisan, blah, 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 blah. And you kind of think, well, maybe. But she really isn't.
No, she's not. And she was like that in her testimony either. I mean, she just was just the facts.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not like I tried to goad her into being such, but I didn't discover that until I was talking to her. And then I was like, wow, boy, good for her. Because I think it also strengthens what she's saying. Yeah,
she's inflappable. And, we're so politically charged. I'm not breaking any new ground here. I mean, I was looking at your Twitter, and I can tell, I always ask, do you do your own Twitter? Do you have someone manage it for you? And obviously you do your own because you're very political and you kind of flirt with that in your comedy
all the
specials.
typos. Someone who was doing that would be fired by now with all those typos.
Well, I had to quit Twitter because I was just turning into a raving lunatic. And I was rereading my stuff, and I'm like, you're just ranting at this point. So, but I still stalk. Like I use our podcast Twitter account just to read, and I still get fired up. But it's just everyone's like, all the comics I know who started on there, just trying out some jokes, testing it. Everyone got political just because you can't help but get political. And it's just I don't smoke anymore. I don't drink. I don't do any of that stuff. I gave all that up. But I'm still hooked on Twitter. That's my worst habit still, although I don't tweet.
Well, it is it's interesting. John Favreau from
Pod Save America.
Thank you. He started a new pod that's about that.
Right.
About social media. And I've heard him say stuff before on Pod Save America about how much he, paid attention to Twitter and stuff like that. My son was an electronics addict very early on. And so I am well aware of the wiles of in fact, when the whistleblower from Facebook came out, I said to my assistant, I go, well, we need to put in another phone line. Because I know I'm going to be getting a lot of phone calls of people apologizing to me because they didn't believe what I was saying when I was telling them about my son's problem. And surely they're going to want to call and say,
line up.
Sorry, you were right.
Well,
yeah.
I have a teenage daughter, and I didn't have a teenage son, too. And, he's into, like, gaming I'm okay with because he's with other boys. But my daughter is just, I get really, really worried about it. She's 17, going on 18, and it's just... I got to take her picture 50 different times because she doesn't like her picture. Or she doesn't, and just, I know the body issues, and it just really scares me. I don't know, and I'd say I don't know what to do about it, but no one knows what to do about it because we're in uncharted waters. I don't know.
No, we really don't know what to do about it. Gaming is how my son went down.
Which one?
My son.
Oh, gaming.
Gaming was really.
Like what?
It's staying up all night, cheating, lying to be able to get to use the silly, stupid thing, dealing so that he could go buy stuff when he was forbidden to have stuff, and ultimately just plain wouldn't go to school anymore.
Oh, my God. So he was deep in. That's an obsession.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I don't feel as bad right now.
It's an addiction. And the difference is, people will talk about, well, it's not like drugs and alcohol. Well, it's very much like drugs and alcohol. Addiction is addiction. But the difference is we don't generally give our child, a glass of alcohol or heroin when they're 3 or 4.
Yeah, they got to be older for that. Yeah.
I foolishly put him in front of a computer because I thought I was giving him a leg up. They were sold to parents and educators as educational.
Sure.
And they're not. And so by the time I recognized there was a problem, it was because there was an enormous problem. And it just went downhill from there.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, addiction is addiction. I mean, it's all the same thing. It's the same neurotransmitters. It's the same, neural pathways.
Except for at least when you're older, you know what the word means.
Yeah.
Whereas when I would say it to him when he was little, and it occurs to me that I don't think he's saying. But, everything in your brain tells you, you must have that thing. He did gymnastics for years. But before, the coach was always saying to him and the other boys, focus, right? And, he'd already been in gymnastics and we were on our way to a meet one day. And maybe it was his first one, actually. And I said to him, don't worry about it. I said, you go and you do your best. And have fun and stay focused. And he said, what does focus mean? And I really had to laugh at myself because I can't tell you how many times that kid had been told to focus by that point in his life. And it never really occurred to anybody to explain to him what the word meant. And I imagine the same was the case because he started gymnastics when he was like 3 or 4. So oh yeah. I guess maybe they would. I had a roommate that had kids many, many years ago. And I remember that I would say to her kid, I would say, well, remember when we did the blah, blah, blah? I mean, that's a word you would say to your kid, but he was real little at the time. And every time I said it, he would stop and sort of be looking off into space. And I realized later that I'm not sure that he knows what the word remember means necessarily, but by mentioning the scene that I'm asking him to remember, he is in fact remembering. So he's standing there thinking about remember when we went to get the candy that time? Well, he is in fact remembering when we went to get the candy, but he would get the funniest look on his face. I'm like, oh my gosh, he's a verb.
Are your kids out of the house now? All of them?
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well,
I dream about that.
Yeah.
Well, you guys still got the cats. You got like 43 cats.
Right? Well, I have 10 cats and 2 big dogs. Yeah. Parenting,
we have a kitten now. No, I meant to ask you that. And so we have 3 cats, and our house smells like a litter box, and it drives me crazy. Yeah. How do you stop that? You just have to accept it. Oh, you have to accept it.
I finally accepted it. I mean, I have 10 cats. I sift a few times a day. Why do I have 10?
Yeah.
Well, I often explain to people that I had 11 and 1 died.
Gotcha.
But it really is the other way around. I had 16, 8 died, and then I got 2 more.
They all die at once?
I like them. They're fun. They're fun. I ended up getting these 2 kittens in the spring, and I hadn't gotten a new cat in years. And the herd had thinned a good deal over the years, so I was down to 8. And my daughter said to me, "It's like you don't have any." And I don't know, somebody reached out to me, their neighbor's cat had kittens, and it was just somebody that knew actually, and wrote and said, "Hey, do you want kittens?" And I did, and I really had thought I would never get any more. And I got to say, especially in the midst of the stay-at-home order and the depression of just all that's gone on, It was joyous.
You got to figure at this point your neighbors are just tossing cats over your fence. Going, she'll take care of them.
I could have. Yeah, I don't know if I'll do. I don't know. I tell myself I won't do it again. They are, even as kittens, they are pretty goddamn destructive. But my house is now just
shredded and flawed.
I have Adirondack chairs in the living room. I just gave up on having upholstered furniture.
Just beach chairs.
I've never owned a couch anyways because I never wanted a couch. I just gave up. I just went, okay, you guys can have it. And so I live in their house basically, and I take care of them. But it's nice for the occasional petting. I enjoy that, and they're funny. I got those 2 kittens. They're from the same litter. One's black and one. The black cat would, they play so fast. So the black cat would like chase the tortoiseshell cat out of the room, and a couple of seconds later, the tortoiseshell would chase the black cat back into the room. And I'm like, that is a great joke, and I will fall for it every time.
Speaking of jokes, I listened to your new album that you just released last month. That was Paula Poundstone Goes to College for One Night. I got to say this, I'm going to kiss your ass for a second. No one does crowd work better than you do. I just love listening to your crowd work. I'm looking at the titles of some of the tracks is A Guy in the Audience or The Woman in the Sweatshirt. And it's like, I can tell right away it's crowd work. It's just fantastic.
Oh, that's very sweet. Thank you. The truth is that is the audio from an HBO special from a long time ago. It's
That's
funny.
Right.
I listened to it. It had never been released, and then we had the opportunity to do that, and so we did. I can't remember if we edited it. I don't recall anymore. There was some reason I needed to listen to it. And what's really funny is, I guess I saw the show like a long, long time ago when we were editing the original, when we were doing the original HBO special. But this was the first time I'd heard it in 1,000 years. And it was really funny because as I was listening, I'd be listening to this conversation, and it's not that I remember the details of the conversation any longer, but I would think of, like, say I asked the sweatshirt girl a question, and I don't really remember what she says anymore, but say she said, like,
what class? What's your teacher's name?
Yeah. If she said something to me, I would think of a joke while I'm listening. I would think of what I should say next, and then it would turn out that is what I said next. So yeah, my instincts are the same.
It was just so fast, and at one point, this is probably when cell phones were in their babies, because this is probably early 2000s, I guess, and you called her roommate up on the cell phone, which is hilarious. But I mean, it's just that's a risky move in a live show. That could go either way. I was impressed.
My son used to call while I was on stage, He didn't do it on purpose. I mean, he called on purpose, but he didn't know where exactly I was in my day because of time zones and things like that. And he was little.
Right.
And I always left the phone on in case there was an emergency. And so I would answer the phone, and then I would say, I'd talk to him for a couple seconds while the crowd was waiting. And I would say to my son, hold on. And then I would say, do you want the audience to say goodnight to you? And he would say yes. And the whole crowd would say goodnight, Thomasy.
So you had comedy clubs raising your children. Nice.
Theaters.
Theaters. Sorry. No, theaters. Yeah. Yeah. No, I get that. I know you kind of keep us on your list because we're pretty small, but I'm glad you do.
I think I might work 4 clubs in the country anymore, and they're all music clubs. And Annapolis is one of them. Alexandria is one of them. And then
that's probably the Birchmere.
And then
that's a great venue.
It is a great venue. I really love it there. And then there's a couple of them up in Maine that I was just at.
That's Bob Marley territory up there.
Yes, it is. Yeah. There's a lovely little place where they in fact have music called Jonathan's in Ogunquit, and I'm lucky enough to usually get to go there twice a year. I mean, it's funny because now we really don't know what we're going to do. I mean, if I was just there and it was great, and I hope to return, but one of the things that the last couple of years have taught me, and it was a rough lesson, it just never occurred to me that something so big and so bad could happen.
No.
I just never, maybe it's better not to live a life of dread, but, I thought, there's a possibility I leg or something, right? And that, I'm disabled for a little while, but, it will be a little while. But this idea that, it's, there can't be theater shows anymore because people will, because it will spread a horrible disease. Wow. That one never even occurred to me.
Well, especially for comedy shows, because look, I can work from home. Everyone else can work from home and just pick up, but you're not going to be at-home comic. It just doesn't work. And I know that some comedians tried the Zoom thing, and it just you can't do it. So I know a bunch of comics, and they were just bouncing off walls for the last year and a half. Not just because of the money, but just because they're social animals. They got to be out there. They got to be on stage, and they were dying.
Yeah, I did a bunch of. I made comedy videos right away when I first came home because, again, I had no idea.
I saw your workout videos. Yeah,
I did workout videos. I did these. I did Miss Nancy, who was teaching online to first graders. Mm-hmm. I did. I think I might have done one more. I did a couple of Joan of Arc's, and I did. I did a Cooking with Rhonda. Some of which were characters that I had done a long time ago. Miss Nancy was new, and then the workout video thing was new. But I did those just to cheer people up. I mean, I thought, at the time I thought this was going to go on for maybe a couple of months at the most.
We all did.
And I thought, people are so freaked out, I'll do this to cheer them up. And then it became clear that I had no income. It was a bitter pill.
And they start looking at that bank account and go, wait a minute, it's got to let up soon.
No, the news came with a jolt, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
I was like, wait a minute.
Well, you're on full tour now.
Oh my God!
Let's see.
I'm very busy.
You're in
now,
York, Pennsylvania, like on Friday, and then you're down in Florida for a few days or like a week, and then you're in Connecticut, back up, then back into California, and then back into Iowa. I don't want to tell you your business, but your manager might want to look at a map here and just kind of make it a little more.
Yeah. Well, we don't believe in routing. I never have. I remember I used to have an agent that was that booked music. And he could never understand how I worked. He was always saying, why didn't I go out for 6 months and then come home for 6 months? And by the way, that's a horrible idea. Yeah. But he just did, because if you're booking music, well, they have a van full of equipment, right? Or, so routing is very important to them. Whereas for me, it doesn't matter at all.
No, you're not bringing anything with you. So I guess it's easier.
It's right. I flew home to California one time from Florida hours, and then I went back again. because I wanted to see my cats. I just wanted to be at home for a little while.
You're in the bathroom?
Yeah, I was home. I mean, I was at my house for 2 hours, and then I had to go back to the airport.
Did you really? Oh, I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
I mean, if I fly once every 2 months, I'm bitching about it.
Well, I was younger then. I don't think it hurt my back as much.
Mm.
Whereas now I feel like an old hinge when I'm on an airplane. I feel like my hips must make a sound now while I'm sleeping. They must hear like a.
Well, because they crowbar you in there. I'm 6'3", and I resent planes.
Oh my gosh,
it just drives me crazy. I am not flying anywhere anytime soon, but you're going to be out here on Saturday, December 18th, and you're doing 2 shows, 6 p.m. and a 9 p.m. show on the 18th.
Yeah?
Yep. For tickets, you go to ramsheadonstage.com, and this always sells out, so you want to move pretty quickly. So I checked out the website before I gave you a call, and it looks like it's moving pretty quickly. So anyone want to buy tickets, it's ramsheadonstage.com.
It's a small place. That's what did you say? Ramsheadonstage.com. It's a small place. So as I say, it will be like seeing Bruce Springsteen in a small place in New Jersey, except for it's Maryland, and I'm not Bruce Springsteen.
But you do like 4 or 5 hour shows. I know that. So that's where it's kind of the same.
I do a long show. I don't jump the way he does.
But you know what they're doing that morning is at 12:30. So you want to come in early. It's what is it here? It is a very merry drag brunch. I'm guessing it's like a cabaret sort of thing, but it's a drag brunch.
I saw that. Yeah. I thought, how could they do that without me?
Well, a lot of Adele and Cher music, I'm guessing. I've never been to one, but I might do it.
Do people do Adele now? Do drag queens do Adele?
I'd have to think so. I mean, I'm not. Who doesn't like a good drag show? I mean, I'd love to go, frankly, but I mean, I'm just guessing, but I bet you I'm right. I mean, Adele just seems right up that alley.
I never thought. I don't think I ever thought about it. I took my kids one time with me at a club that was a benefit for something in Hollywood, and they had a guy that was he was a drag guy, but he was singing a duet. It was "You Don't Send Me Flowers."
I love that song.
And so he did Streisand, and was it Andy Gibb?
No, it was Neil Diamond.
Well, it was so brilliant. It was the one guy doing both, and oh my gosh, it was funny.
I imagine he had his face like down the middle, something like that, where he had the makeup on one
remember,
side.
But what I remember is my kids were like, they mostly, I don't know, they come with me for things, and they could, when they were little, they just had no use for most of it. But this year, they were so entertained by it. It was really funny. The guy was great.
I might go to it. I'm going to go to your show, but I'm going to start off the day with the drag brunch, because who wouldn't like that?
Let me know how it goes.
All right. Well, I'll let you go, because I know you got to pack for York, Pennsylvania. That's where they make York peppermint patties, by the way.
I do.
Yep. And it's near 3 Mile Island, too, so just be careful. Although I think it's fine now. But again, so you'll be here on December 18th for a 6 p.m. and a 9 p.m. show. Tickets are available at ramsheadonstage.com. And Paula, I can't wait to talk to you next December. This is how I start off my holiday season, is talking with you.
Well, thanks so much.
Great. So we'll see you on the 18th. Thanks, Paula. Great talking to you.
Cool. Take care.